Look at this. A giant wooden wheel, nearly the height of a house, turning slowly through the night in a remote Derbyshire valley. Water pours onto its paddles from an iron trough suspended overhead, and as the wheel rotates, a deep mechanical rumble echoes through the darkness. Inside the stone building behind it, hundreds of spindles whirl simultaneously, drawing raw cotton into yarn at speeds never seen before in human history. This is Cromford Mill in 1771, and what you are witnessing is nothing less than the birth of the modern world. The building itself rises 5 stories against the limestone cliffs, its coursed grit stone walls lined internally with brick. It measures roughly 28 meters long and 8 meters wide, with rows of arched windows that glow amber through the night. For unlike any workshop before it, this mill never stops. Through those windows, you can glimpse the shadows of workers moving among the machinery, tending to machines that transform raw cotton boll into strong, workable yarn. The man responsible for this revolutionary operation is Richard Arkwright, a former wig maker and barber from Preston who has just built what historians will later recognize as the world's first successful water-powered cotton spinning mill. The story of every thread produced here begins thousands of miles away, on the cotton plantations of the American South and the Caribbean. Raw cotton arrives at English ports in compressed bales weighing several hundred pounds each. The journey by sea takes weeks, and when the cotton reaches Liverpool or Bristol, it carries with it the seeds, leaves, and debris of its harvesting. These bales are then transported overland by pack horse and wagon through the rough English countryside, making their way to this narrow valley where the River Derwent cuts through the Derbyshire hills. When a cotton shipment arrives at Cromford Mill, it enters through the main gate into the mill yard, passing beneath what Arkwright proudly calls the first door, an entrance decorated with fine Gibbsian masonry that hints at his ambitions. The bales are unloaded into a ground-floor storage area in one of the peripheral buildings, where workers immediately begin the laborious process of opening them. The compressed cotton inside is matted and dirty, tangled with fragments of plant material and the occasional dead insect. Before it can be processed by any machine, it must first be beaten and picked clean by hand. This initial cleaning takes place in a sealed working area with large doors to contain the choking clouds of dust and fiber that fill the air. Workers, many of them women and young children, sit at long benches with the raw cotton piled before them. Using their fingers and simple hand tools, they pull apart the matted fibers, removing seeds, bits of leaf, and any foreign matter. The air is thick enough to taste. Cotton dust settles on skin and clothing, and workers breathe it deep into their lungs. This is hard, tedious labor, but it is essential. The machines that follow will not tolerate debris. A single seed or twig caught in the rollers can damage equipment worth more than a worker earns in months. Once the cotton has been picked clean, it moves to the next stage, carding. In traditional cottage production, carding was done by hand using 2 wooden paddles studded with wire teeth. A worker would spread raw cotton onto one paddle and brush the other against it repeatedly, combing and straightening the fibers until they lay in the same direction. It was exhausting work, and a skilled carder might process only a few ounces in an hour. But Richard Arkwright has something else in mind. In 1775, 4 years after opening this first mill, he will patent a water-powered carding machine that revolutionizes this process entirely. For now, in 1771, carding at Cromford is still performed by hand, but the principles Arkwright observes here will inform his mechanical solution. Watch the carders at work. They sit in rows, their movements rhythmic and practiced. The scratch, scratch, scratch of wire teeth against fiber, creating a constant backdrop of sound. From their cards emerge loose rolls of straightened cotton fiber, soft and fluffy as clouds. These rolls are called rovings, and they are the raw material that feeds Arkwright's revolutionary spinning machine. The rovings are delicate things. Each one is roughly 24 inches long, a loose tube of aligned cotton fibers with almost no structural strength. If you pull on one, it will separate immediately. The fibers are held together only by the gentle friction between them, and the slightest rough handling will destroy their alignment. Workers carry these rovings carefully to the upper floors of the mill, climbing narrow staircases worn smooth by thousands of footsteps, to where the water frames wait. Now we come to the heart of Cromford Mill, to the machine that changed everything. The water frame stands as tall as a man, a wooden framework bristling with spindles, rollers, and flyer mechanisms. Arkwright's original design used 4 pairs of rollers that rotate at different speeds, and this differential rotation is the key to the entire operation. The roving enters the machine between the first pair of rollers. As it passes through, each successive pair of rollers turns slightly faster than the one before it. This has a remarkable effect. The cotton is drawn out and attenuated, stretched thinner and thinner, while the twist of the spindles below locks the fibers together into strong, continuous thread. The mechanism is elegant in its simplicity. Each roving feeds down through the roller system, while a bobbin and flyer arrangement below provides the twist that transforms loose fiber into yarn. The flyer spins around the bobbin at high speed, wrapping the newly formed thread in even layers, while the rollers continue to feed cotton from above. The ratio between roller speed and spindle rotation determines the thickness and strength of the final yarn. Too much twist, and the thread becomes brittle. Too little, and it will break under the tension of the loom. What makes this machine truly revolutionary is not just its mechanism, but its scale. Where James Hargreaves's spinning jenny could produce 8 threads at once using human power, Arkwright's water frame can spin 96 threads simultaneously, and it runs continuously for as long as the water wheel turns. The workers do not operate these machines in the traditional sense. They tend them. They feed fresh rovings into the rollers, repair any threads that break, and change the bobbins when they fill with yarn. The skill required is minimal compared to hand spinning. A child of 10 can be trained to operate a water frame in days, and this is exactly what Arkwright needs. The water frame represents a fundamental shift in the relationship between human labor and mechanical power. The machine does not amplify human effort the way a spinning wheel does. It replaces it. The power comes from the water wheel in the basement, transmitted upward through a system of wooden shafts, gears, and leather belts that drives every spindle in the building simultaneously. Let us follow that power from its source. The Cromford site draws water from 2 supplies: the Bonsall Brook, a small stream that descends from the hills above the village, and the Cromford Sough, a drainage channel that carries water from the lead mines between Wirksworth and Cromford. Neither source produces a large volume of water, but together they offer something arguably more valuable: constancy. While mills dependent on the River Derwent might run dry in summer or freeze in winter, Cromford's twin water sources flow reliably year-round. The mine drainage runs warm even in the coldest months, preventing ice from forming in the channels. An aqueduct carries the Cromford Sough water to the mill, where it drops onto an overshot water wheel from above. Recent research suggests this arrangement was present from the very beginning of operations, with water delivered by launder to fall onto the wheel's paddles, rotating it with tremendous force. The wheel itself sits in a pit at the base of the mill, its axle connected to a primary drive shaft that runs the length of the building. From this central shaft, power is transferred to each floor through a system of vertical shafts, bevel gears, and horizontal line shafts mounted beneath the ceiling. Leather belts connect these line shafts to individual machines, and the entire system pulses with a rhythmic mechanical heartbeat that never stops. The noise inside the mill is overwhelming. The clatter of wooden machinery, the hum of spinning spindles, the creak of the water wheel, the slap of leather belts against wooden drums. All of it combines into a constant roar that makes conversation impossible except at close range. Workers develop their own system of hand signals and lip reading. They learn to feel vibrations through the floor that warn of mechanical problems. They come to know the rhythm of the machines so intimately that the slightest variation alerts them to potential failure. The atmosphere is thick with cotton dust. It hangs in the air like fog, settling on every surface, working its way into lungs and eyes. The lint accumulates on clothing and hair until workers emerge at the end of their shifts looking like ghosts. Ventilation is minimal. Large windows would compromise the building's security and temperature control. And the air grows warm from the friction of hundreds of moving parts. In winter, this warmth is welcome, but in summer, the heat becomes oppressive. Arkwright runs his mill in 2 shifts of 12 hours each, keeping production continuous through day and night. The working day is determined by the clock tower rather than by daylight, a revolutionary concept in an age when most labor follows the natural rhythm of the sun. Workers report at 6 in the morning or 6 in the evening, and they remain at their stations until the bell in the mill's cupola signals the end of their shift. Breaks for meals are brief, often taken standing at the machines to minimize the interruption to production. The workforce at Cromford Mill presents a startling picture to modern eyes. The majority of employees are women and children, with the youngest workers sometimes as young as 7 years old. Children are particularly valued for their small fingers, which can reach into tight spaces to repair broken threads, and for their ability to crawl beneath the machinery to sweep up accumulated cotton waste. They work the same 12-hour shifts as adults, though Arkwright, considered progressive for his time, eventually raises the minimum working age to 10 and provides 6 hours of education per week. The conditions at Cromford are notably better than at many mills that follow. Arkwright does not employ the pauper apprentice system used elsewhere, where orphaned children are purchased from workhouses and bound to serve until age 21. Instead, he recruits local families, providing housing in purpose-built cottages nearby and organizing community events and festivals for his workers. This is not purely altruistic. A stable, healthy workforce is more productive than a desperate, transient one. But it represents a genuinely different approach to industrial labor. As the rovings pass through the water frame and emerge as finished yarn, they wind onto bobbins that grow fat with thread. When a bobbin is full, the worker removes it and replaces it with an empty one in a motion practiced until it becomes automatic. The full bobbins are collected and carried to the counting house, where clerks record their weight and quality before they are packed for shipment to weavers across England. The yarn produced by Arkwright's water frame is fundamentally different from that made by hand spinning or by the spinning jenny. It is strong enough to serve as warp thread, the vertical threads on a loom that must bear the constant tension of the weaving process. Before Arkwright, English weavers had to use linen thread for their warp, producing a blended fabric called fustian rather than pure cotton cloth. The water frame changes this equation entirely. Its yarn is suitable for both warp and weft, enabling the production of true cotton fabric for the first time in English industrial history. The implications ripple outward like waves from a stone dropped in water. The demand for cotton grows exponentially. Ships carry ever larger quantities from the plantations to English ports. More mills spring up along the rivers of Lancashire, Derbyshire, and Nottinghamshire, all modeled on Arkwright's system. The price of cotton cloth drops as production increases, making it affordable to classes of people who once could only afford rough wool or linen. A revolution in clothing and household textiles begins, driven by machines that never tire and water that never stops flowing. Arkwright himself becomes enormously wealthy. Within 5 years, he begins construction of a second mill at Cromford. This one 6 stories tall with 36 meters of length and powered by 2 water wheels. He builds housing for his workers, a church, a market, and an inn. He acquires other mill sites throughout England and licenses his technology to entrepreneurs eager to replicate his success. By the early 1780s, he employs over 1,000 workers at Cromford alone. But what happens here in 1771 matters beyond the personal fortune of one man. This is where the factory system is born. The idea that production can be organized around powered machinery, operating continuously in purpose-built facilities with workers whose schedules are determined by the demands of the machine rather than the rhythm of traditional craft. Every factory that follows, from the textile mills of Manchester to the automobile plants of Detroit, traces its lineage back to this stone building beside the Bonsall Brook. Look again at the water frame as it operates through the night. Cotton enters as loose, fragile roving, and emerges as strong, even yarn. The transformation takes only seconds, a journey that once required hours of skilled human labor compressed into the passage of fiber through 4 pairs of rollers. Above the machine, the line shaft turns with a steady rhythm transmitted from the water wheel below. The spindles whirl, the bobbins fill, and outside, the great wheel continues its slow rotation, driven by water that flows from the darkness of abandoned lead mines into the light of a new industrial age. The cotton produced here will be woven into shirts and dresses, bed linens and curtains, sails and tents. It will clothe the growing populations of English cities and travel by ship to markets across the globe. And every yard of that cloth carries within its fibers the legacy of this place, of the water that powered the wheel, the workers who tended the machines, and the man who imagined that cotton could be spun not by human hands, but by the ceaseless turning of mechanical arms. By the time Richard Arkwright dies in 1792, the landscape of English industry has been transformed beyond recognition. Hundreds of mills operate on his system, and the factory has become the defining institution of industrial production. But it all began here, in this narrow valley, where a barber's son looked at a flowing stream and saw something no one had seen before: the power to spin a new world into being.